The Cricilian dreadnought hung in the shadow of Proxima Station, its crystalline hull absorbing all light, like a hole cut in space itself. Inside, Commander Vextar clicked her mandibles nervously as she reviewed the mission parameters one final time. The target was simple: acquire leverage against the Centaur Mining Corporation by kidnapping their CFO's youngest daughter. A standard operation for the Cricilian Acquisition Guild. But something felt wrong. The encrypted intelligence they'd purchased had come too easily, the security patterns too predictable. Still, the Guild Council had insisted. The humans were expanding too quickly, taking too many resource-rich systems. They needed to be taught their place. Strike team in position. Sub-Commander Crix reported, his compound eyes reflecting the holographic displays. Security systems neutralized. We have a 20-minute window. Vextar nodded, her crystalline exoskeleton catching the dim light. Proceed with extraction. Minimal force. The target is a juvenile. Through the neural link, she watched as her elite team infiltrated the luxury habitat module. Their biomechanical combat suits rendered them nearly invisible, perfect predators stalking through the artificial night. The target's quarters were exactly where their intelligence indicated. Habitat Ring C, Suite 217. The door's security system fell to their quantum decryption tools in seconds. Inside, they found their target sleeping peacefully. Small, fragile-looking, just as the briefing had indicated. The extraction was flawless. No alarms, no witnesses, no complications. It wasn't until they were safely back in hyperspace that Vextar realized their catastrophic error. The genetic scan results flashed across her neural interface, and she felt her hemolymph run cold. This wasn't the CFO's daughter. This was Sarah Chen, only child of Admiral Jessica Chen, Earth's most decorated fleet commander and the architect of humanity's lightning expansion into the stars. By the first queen, Vextar whispered, her mandibles trembling. What have we done? The child slept in the medical bay, monitored by the ship's eye. She was small even by human standards, with dark hair and delicate features that betrayed her partial Asian ancestry. She looked nothing like the target they'd been briefed on. The intelligence had been wrong, or worse, deliberately falsified. In the command center, Vextar faced the unavoidable truth. The Cricilian Acquisition Guild had just committed an act of war against the most dangerous military commander in human space. The same Jessica Chen who had outmaneuvered the Rigelian Armada at the Battle of Ta City. The strategist who had never lost a major engagement. Options, she demanded of her command staff. Sub-Commander Crix's antennae twitched anxiously. We could return her, claim it was a training exercise gone wrong, and admit to infiltrating the civilian habitat, violating multiple peace treaties. First Officer Zaxel clicked in derision. The humans would use it as an excuse for war regardless. We could attempt to hide her, another officer suggested. There are remote colonies. From Admiral Chen. Vextar's laugh was bitter. She once tracked a stealth cruiser through 11 systems using only gravitational distortion patterns. No, we cannot hide from her. The child stirred in the medical bay, and Vextar watched through the monitors as she opened her eyes for the first time since the abduction. There was no fear in those eyes, only curiosity as she took in her alien surroundings. She sat up, studying the medical equipment with obvious interest. "Hello," Sarah called out, her voice steady. "I know someone's watching. I'd like to talk. Please." Vextar felt something she hadn't experienced in cycles. Uncertainty. The girl's composure was unnerving. Most adults would be panicking, but this child seemed almost excited. "My mom says that if you ever find yourself in an unexpected situation, the first step is to open a dialogue," Sarah continued, speaking to the empty room. So, dialogue. In that moment, Vextar made a decision that would reshape the relationship between their species. She walked to the medical bay, her crystalline form towering over the small human child. Sarah's eyes widened, not in fear, but in wonder. "You're beautiful," the girl said simply, like walking stained glass. "I'm Sarah. Did you know you took the wrong person? Because I think you did, and that's probably going to be a problem." Vextar's mandibles clicked in what might have been a laugh, might have been a sob. "Yes, small one. We made a very big mistake." "Mom's going to be pretty angry," Sarah said thoughtfully. "But maybe we can fix this before she does something dramatic. She can be a bit excessive when she's worried about me." As if in answer to the child's words, the ship's sensors detected the first ripples of multiple vessels dropping out of hyperspace. The hunters had become the hunted, and Admiral Chen's response was about to redefine the meaning of excessive. Admiral Jessica Chen stood on the bridge of the EFSS Hyperion, her face a mask of cold fury as she studied the tactical display. 20 ships of Earth's most advanced battle group had already emerged from hyperspace, with more arriving every hour. The Krakilian dreadnought's energy signature pulsed weakly at the edge of their sensor range, like a wounded animal trying to hide. Multiple exit vectors plotted. Her tactical officer reported, "They can't escape the cordon. Admiral, we have them contained." Chen barely nodded, her eyes never leaving the display. The Krakilians had taken her daughter, her only child. The rational part of her mind knew she should follow protocol, engage in diplomatic channels, let the politicians handle this. But another part, the part that remembered teaching Sarah to read, to swim, to dream of the stars, that part wanted to reduce the alien ship to atoms. "Open a channel," she ordered, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "Let's see what they have to say for themselves." Aboard the Krakilian vessel, the situation had evolved in unexpected ways. Sarah Chen sat cross-legged in what had been designated as her temporary quarters, surrounded by young Krakilians. The crystalline alien children had been drawn to her like moths to a flame, fascinated by her stories and questions. "So your bodies grow these amazing crystals naturally?" Sarah asked, reaching out to gently touch one young Krakilian's iridescent arm. "That's incredible. On Earth, we have to grow crystals in labs, and they're never this complex." The young Krakilians clicked and hummed in excitement, their natural bioluminescence brightening in response to her interest. They had never met a human before, and certainly not one who showed such genuine fascination with their biology and culture. Commander Vextar watched this unexpected cultural exchange through the ship's monitoring systems, her mandibles twitching in confused wonder. This was not how hostage situations were supposed to develop. The human child should be frightened, withdrawn, not teaching her captor's children human hand games and basic English phrases. "Commander," her communications officer called urgently. "We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. It's Admiral Chen herself." The main view screen illuminated, revealing the face of humanity's most feared military commander. Chen's expression was composed, but her eyes burned with carefully controlled rage. "I believe you have something that belongs to me," Chen said softly, dangerously. "I suggest you return her immediately, before I demonstrate exactly why the Regelians still have nightmares about Ta Siti." Vextar stepped forward, her crystalline form catching the light. "Admiral Chen, I am Commander Vextar. There has been a grave error." "Mom," Sarah's voice interrupted as she rushed into view, trailed by her small entourage of Krakilian children. "Mom, you have to see this. Did you know their bodies naturally produce quantum-entangled crystals? The applications for communication technology alone are amazing." Admiral Chen's carefully constructed mask of military authority cracked slightly as she watched her daughter, apparently unharmed and thoroughly excited, surrounded by alien children. "Sarah, are you all right?" "I'm fine. I mean, getting kidnapped wasn't great, but it was a mistake. They thought I was someone else. And look." She held up a small crystalline structure. "Zixel taught me how their writing system works. It's based on crystal growth patterns. It's like their whole language is fractal mathematics." The bridge of the Hyperion fell silent as the assembled officers watched their legendary admiral try to process the sight of her kidnapped daughter, giving what amounted to a xenobiology lecture. The Chrykilian children, picking up on Sarah's excitement, began demonstrating their bioluminescent abilities, turning the command center into an impromptu light show. "Commander Vexstar," Chen said finally, her voice carrying a new note of uncertainty. "I suggest we discuss this situation in detail. It seems there have been unexpected developments." Indeed, Vexstar agreed, watching as Sarah attempted to teach the Chrykilian children to play patty cake with their crystalline appendages. "Though I fear the situation has grown more complex rather than less." In the following hours, as diplomats were summoned and official channels established, Sarah continued her cultural exchange program with characteristic enthusiasm. She drew diagrams of Earth's solar system, shared stories about human history, and in return, learned about Chrykilian crystal songs and their three-dimensional art forms. The young Chrykilians, for their part, were equally fascinated by her. They had been raised on stories of humans as dangerous expansionists, a threat to their way of life. Instead, they found a creature who looked at their alien features with wonder rather than fear, who asked endless questions about their biology and culture, and who seemed genuinely delighted by their differences rather than repelled. Watching this through the ship's monitors, both Chen and Vexstar came to the same realization. The situation had evolved far beyond a simple diplomatic incident. Their children, human and Chrykilian alike, were forging connections that could reshape the future of both species, assuming the adults didn't ruin it with war first. The Galactic Council's emergency session chamber hummed with tension as representatives from a dozen species argued over the Chrykilian human crisis. The Chrykilian delegation's crystalline forms glittered under the harsh lights, while Earth's representatives maintained rigid diplomatic postures. Admiral Chen sat next to the Earth ambassador, her military uniform a stark contrast to the flowing diplomatic robes around her. Her eyes remained fixed on the massive holographic display showing her daughter, still aboard the Chrykilian vessel. The feed was now a requirement of the temporary agreement, proof of Sarah's continued safety and well-being. Currently, Sarah was conducting what she called a cultural exchange workshop. She had somehow convinced the ship's AI to project a massive periodic table and was enthusiastically comparing Earth elements to their Chrykilian equivalents. Her audience had grown from just the children to include several adult Chrykilians, their crystalline forms oriented toward her with unmistakable fascination. "The human child appears to be collecting quite a following," remarked the Centaurian delegate, their feathered crest rippling with amusement. "Perhaps we should recruit her for our diplomatic corps." "She is a hostage," Chen replied coldly, "not an ambassador." "Is she?" The Centaurian's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. "Watch." On the display, Sarah was explaining the concept of human music to her audience. She had drawn a crude musical staff on a datapad and was demonstrating how Earth's musical notation worked. The Chrykilian children were responding by creating harmonics with their crystalline bodies, their natural frequencies resonating in complex patterns. "Incredible." Sarah's voice carried through the chamber speakers. "You're naturally producing quarter tones. Earth composers have been trying to incorporate those into our music for centuries, but our traditional instruments make it difficult. Can you modulate the frequency?" The resulting crystal song was hauntingly beautiful, a melody impossible for human vocal cords to produce. The council chamber fell silent, dozens of alien species transfixed by the impromptu concert. Commander Vexstar, watching from her position with the Chrykilian delegation, felt her own crystalline structure vibrating in sympathetic resonance. The children were performing an ancient Chrykilian greeting song, one traditionally reserved for welcoming lost family members home. The significance wasn't lost on her. "We have a unique opportunity here," the Centaurian delegate continued softly. "A chance to turn a potential war into something transformative." In the ship's converted classroom, Sarah was now recording the crystal songs with equipment borrowed from the science lab. "This is amazing. The harmonics you produce could revolutionize our understanding of musical theory. And look, when you sing, The crystalline patterns in your bodies reconfigure slightly. It's like your entire species is one big symphony. The young Crocillians, encouraged by her enthusiasm, began teaching her their traditional songs. Their adult observers watched in amazement as the human child attempted to translate their complex harmonics into Earth musical notation, creating a bridge between their cultures through mathematics and music. Back in the council chamber, the diplomatic discussions had taken an unexpected turn. The Crocillian High Commissioner, their crystalline form refracting light in complex patterns, addressed the assembly. What began as a grievous error has revealed something our species had forgotten. They resonated, their voice carrying harmonics of emotion. The ability to see through new eyes, to learn and grow from our differences rather than fear them. Admiral Chen's expression remained stern, but her eyes never left the display showing her daughter. Sarah was now attempting to teach the Crocillian children Earth songs, their crystalline bodies humming with approximations of human melodies. The result was discordant but earnest, bringing unexpected smiles to both human and Crocillian observers. A week ago, the High Commissioner continued, we would have said it was impossible for our species to share music, that our biological differences were too great. Now, thanks to a child's curiosity, we have proof that harmony can exist between our peoples, both literally and metaphorically. The Earth ambassador leaned forward. Are you suggesting we simply forget the act of aggression against a human civilian, against the daughter of a high-ranking military officer? No. The commissioner's crystalline form shifted, creating patterns that signified deep respect. We are suggesting we use this crisis as a catalyst for change. Our children have shown us a path forward. Perhaps it is time for the adults to follow their lead. As if to emphasize the point, the holographic display showed Sarah and her Crocillian companions attempting to combine Earth rhythms with crystal songs. The result was something entirely new, neither human nor Crocillian, but a genuine fusion of both cultures. Admiral Chen watched her daughter, radiating joy as she collaborated with aliens who were supposed to be her captors, and felt her rigid military resolve beginning to crack. Sometimes, she realized, the greatest victories come not from winning battles, but from recognizing when not to fight them. The crisis reached its breaking point in the most unexpected way, through a children's art project. Sarah had been teaching the young Crocillians about Earth's visual arts, specifically the human concept of painting. The crystalline aliens, who had never encountered such a form of expression, were fascinated by the idea of creating images through pigments rather than light refraction. In the ship's makeshift art studio, Sarah guided her alien friends through their first painting experience. See, you can mix the colors to create new ones, she explained, demonstrating with watercolors, just like how you combine frequencies in your crystal songs. The young Crocillians, after some initial confusion about handling brushes with their crystalline appendages, threw themselves into the project with enthusiasm. Their natural ability to refract light added an unexpected dimension to their artwork. Each painting seemed to shift and change as the artists moved, creating dynamic, living pieces that merged human and Crocillian artistic traditions. But it was one particular painting that changed everything. A young Crocillian named Zixel had created an image of human and Crocillian children playing together under a sky filled with stars. The stars were rendered in traditional Crocillian crystal light patterns, while the figures below were painted in Earth-style watercolors. It was a child's simple vision of harmony between their species. The image went viral across both human and Crocillian networks. In the Crocillian High Council chamber, the painting became the center of a fierce debate. Conservative members argued that this human contamination of their culture had to be stopped. Others saw it as a sign of necessary evolution, a way forward for their species. Look at what these children have created, Elder Vixnor argued, her crystalline form vibrating with passion. Not just art, but a new way of seeing. For millennia, we have expressed ourselves through light and crystal growth. Now, these children have found a way to combine our traditions with human methods, creating something entirely new. The opposition was equally vocal. This is exactly why the humans are dangerous. Counselor Krez Tai countered. Their influence spreads like a virus, changing everything it touches. Soon, we will lose what makes us Krakilian. Meanwhile, on Earth, similar debates rage. Military hardliners demanded immediate action against the Krakilians, while others pointed to the unprecedented cultural exchange taking place as a reason for pause. Admiral Chen found herself in an impossible position. Her military training demanded one response, her heart as a mother another. She watched as her daughter, supposedly a hostage, continued to break down barriers between their species with nothing more than curiosity and compassion. The situation came to a head when a group of hardline Krakilian militants attempted to seize control of the ship holding Sarah. They saw the growing cultural exchange as a threat to their way of life and were determined to end it, violently if necessary. Commander Vexstar received the warning just minutes before the attack began. "Get the children to safety," she ordered, her crystalline form shifting to combat configuration. All of them, human and Krakilian alike. The militants struck with precision, cutting power to key systems and breaching the hull in multiple locations. What they didn't expect was the response they received, not just from the ship's security forces, but from their own people. Adult Krakilians who had been observing Sarah's classes formed living barriers of crystalline bodies, protecting both human and Krakilian children. The ship's crew, who had started as captors and evolved into reluctant hosts, now fought fiercely to defend their unexpected guest. Sarah, displaying the same composure she'd shown since her abduction, helped organize the younger children. "Remember the crystal songs we learned," she called out. "The ones about strength and harmony. Sing them now." The sound that filled the ship's corridors was unlike anything in human or Krakilian history, a perfect fusion of crystal harmonics and human melody, sung by children of both species. The militants, faced with this physical manifestation of the very cultural blending they feared, faltered. In the midst of the chaos, Admiral Chen made her decision. The human fleet, which had been maintaining its threatening cordon around the Krakilian vessel, received new orders. Instead of preparing for attack, they moved to protect the ship from any additional militant forces that might be approaching. "We're not just defending my daughter anymore," Chen announced to her surprised crew. "We're defending the future, one that those children can see clearly, even if we adults have been too blind to recognize it." 1 year after what historians would later call the Sarah Chen incident, the first joint human Krakilian cultural center opened its doors on a neutral space station orbiting Proxima Centauri. Its main hall featured a prominent display, a child's watercolor painting of humans and Krakilians under a crystalline star field. Sarah Chen, now officially designated as a junior cultural ambassador, stood beside Commander Vexstar as they prepared to address the assembled dignitaries. The human girl had grown a few inches taller, while the Krakilian's crystalline form had developed new patterns, changes that reflected their shared experiences. "I never intended to start a revolution," Sarah whispered to her former captor, now mentor and friend. "I just wanted to learn about your crystals." Vexstar's form shimmered with amusement. "The greatest changes often come from the simplest curiosity, little one." The ceremony began with a performance by the newly formed Human Krakilian Youth Ensemble. Young voices merged with crystal songs in complex harmonies that would have been considered impossible a year ago. The audience, human, Krakilian, and representatives from a dozen other species, watched in amazement as art forms, separated by light years in biology, found common ground. Admiral Chen, seated in the front row in full dress uniform, felt tears in her eyes as she watched her daughter take the podium. Around her sat the Krakilian children who had first befriended Sarah during her captivity, their crystalline forms now modified with small adaptations specifically designed to better interact with human technology and art forms. "A year ago, a mistake brought our peoples to the brink of war," Sarah began, her voice clear and confident. "But it also showed us something important, that sometimes the best way to see the truth is through a child's eyes. We didn't see enemies or allies, threats or opportunities. We just saw each other as people to learn from, to create with, to understand. Zixel, the young Cricillian artist whose painting had gone viral, stepped forward next. Their crystalline form now incorporated specialized surfaces designed for painting, a revolutionary modification that had scandalized traditionalists but inspired a new generation of Cricillian artists. Our bodies are crystalline. Zixel resonated, growing in patterns determined by ancient genetic codes. But Sarah taught us that growth can take new forms, that tradition and innovation can exist in harmony. Like our crystal songs, life is richer when we allow new frequencies to join the harmony. In the audience, the Cricillian militants who had opposed the cultural exchange sat in silence, their resistance softened by a year of watching their children flourish in ways they had never imagined possible. Many of their own young had developed new crystal growth patterns influenced by exposure to human art and music, not a dilution of their culture as feared, but an evolution of it. Commander Vextar stepped forward to make the final address. One standard year ago, I made what I thought was the greatest mistake of my career. I accidentally kidnapped the daughter of Earth's most decorated military commander. She paused as ripples of amusement ran through the audience. That mistake turned out to be the most important correct decision of my life. Admiral Chen stood and walked to the podium, joining Vextar. The two former adversaries stood together, symbolizing the bridge their peoples had built. Sometimes, Chen added, we need our children to remind us of who we can be. They see possibilities where we see problems, bridges where we see barriers. The ceremony concluded with the unveiling of a new educational exchange program. Hundreds of human and Cricillian children would now have the opportunity to study together, creating new forms of art, music, and science that combine the strengths of both species. As the applause faded, Sarah looked out at the assembled crowd, humans and Cricillians sitting together, their children playing and learning side by side. She remembered the fear and uncertainty of that first night on the Cricillian ship, how she had chosen curiosity over terror, questions over accusations. Mom, she whispered to Admiral Chen, do you think we could accidentally kidnap someone from the Centaurians next? Their feather-light technology looks fascinating. Chen's laugh echoed through the hall, joined by the crystalline chimes of Cricillian amusement. Sometimes, the greatest victories come not from the strength of our weapons, but from the openness of our hearts and the boundless curiosity of a child's mind.